So there was not that problem for me this past Saturday at noon because as one game appeared hopeless, I changed to the other game, and then that game appeared hopeless, and then I was in a quandary.
Right, now what?
I did not know what to do at that point.
Lawn work.
Which I eventually got to that. And I listened to the games. Actually, I was watching them on TV, but listening it through whatever. It was just stupid. It was a tough week. Bryn Renner, former North Carolina quarterback. Have you ever been through, not what I was going through, watching the games is not an ordeal. When was the last time you had to deal with that kind of, I don't know, that kind of frustration on a football field?
Well, I should have been doing lawn work too during the game. But no, all seriousness, I can recall we lost to Georgia Tech in 2012, late in the year. I think it was, late October. We lost 68-50, Adam. And when I was watching the game, I kind of put myself, unfairly back in that situation. And, a lot of points were scored and we couldn't stop them, obviously. And it was one of those games where I didn't think we played that bad offensively because we scored 50 points and had all these stats, but we were never really in the game because we were down and chasing by 2 scores. So that was really kind of the only time that I felt like we were still battling to come back. It was such an insurmountable lead that they had. It was almost like it's out of reach. All you can do is go compete.
Yeah, and that was a Georgia Tech team coached by Paul Johnson in that wishbone. I know he called it a spread offense. He can call it what he wants. But it was definitely a wishbone that when they were on, a lot of teams had trouble stopping them because every once in a while he'd just throw a pass to a wide open receiver because who would cover a receiver when you're having that much trouble stopping the run? Bryn Renner, part of the North Carolina radio broadcast. So take me through this game because yes, Carolina scored 50 points, but and they scored piled up 616 yards of total offense, but there were 611 yards by JMU, and I don't even know if it's that good a JMU team. And it seemed like there was a big play, like every third play was a chunk play for them. So what were you seeing from Carolina defensively that allowed that to happen?
Yeah, I want to kind of point out some things that I hit on during the broadcast when I was watching the game. I think one was JMU had a brand new coaching staff and 58 guys were new on the roster. And the way of free agency, and we talked about this last time I was on, is the NIL is real. So all these teams are competitive very quick. Like their best receiver was a transfer from San Diego State.
Okay.
And I knew that kid on tape was going to be a really good player. Running back George Pettaway came from Carolina.
Yes.
4-star kid out of Virginia. So you're really looking at players now instead of saying, hey, this is JMU. No, this is like a George Pettaway that was at UNC recruited. So that was number one for me. Coming into the game, I knew they were extremely talented. And then two, when you watched the game, they looked like they had 2 weeks to prepare because they had a bye week before they came into Keenan. And you and I have both watched enough football. When you have a big game and you're going to play in Carolina and you're James Madison, the expectation, even when you get the calendar and the schedule, hey, man, that's a big game. And college players respond to big-time games. And, I think it was one of those games where it started off really hot. And I think college football more than any sport, why we love it is because it's based off momentum.
Yeah.
They have a block punt. They get the onside kick. They score off an interception. They score like 5 different ways that it's really hard to do that in one game and not win it. And so they just had a lot of breaks and they caught Carolina at a time where, offensively we're still trying to figure it out with Jacoby. It was his first start. And then you got to get away from the running game. I said that all along. I said, Carolina's strength the first 3 weeks was running the ball with Omarion Hampton and trying to figure out who the quarterback was going to be. And that's tough when you get down by 11 points or 14 points and it keeps going and you can't run the football. So it was one of those things where it was almost a perfect storm. And it unfortunately happened and caused Carolina to lose.
Bryn Renner is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. Let's get to Omarion Hampton and the matchup against Duke. Blue Devils have been aggressive. I think if they don't lead the ACC, they're near the top in tackles for loss. I think they have sort of gotten away with maybe some games that they could have, maybe should have lost, but they're 4-0, and they're 4-0 for a reason. They have made some big plays on the defensive side of the ball. How do you create opportunities for Hampton against Duke's defense?
Yeah, the biggest thing is one, Manny Diaz is a very good defensive coach.
Right.
And so going into the game, his number one goal is going to be to stop Omarion in the run game. And Adam, honestly, I would get to him in space. I would throw screen passes. I would, put him outside the backfield. I remember, James White in the Super Bowl, like they put him at receiver and he had 13 catches and he was the MVP.
Yes.
And there's different ways where you can get that guy the ball because, I was always taught by, NFL guys, and especially when I get to the NFL, it's about touches. How can we get Omarion on the ball in space? And, if he's not in the backfield, let's get it to him where he's catching it because he's really good hands and find ways to get him the ball. Not just being, in the pistol and running outside zone. That would be number one. And I think a lot of guys got to step up as well. I think it's time where it's, we're going into game 5 and we have a young receiving core and really good tight end in Nesbitt and Copenhagen is coming on. And guys got to make plays. And Omarion's going to be the featured back, but you got to really find a guy that can kind of counterbalance that on offense.
When we talked to Omarion Hampton at Operation Football down in Charlotte in July, he talked specifically about working on his game out of the backfield, catching the ball. He'd been watching a lot of tape of Christian McCaffrey, I think a pretty good guy to watch in that regard. So, he had talked about the guys he loved growing up were like the Marshawn Lynches of the world, but now he's watching the guys who catch the ball out of the backfield. Yeah, that would be a good idea for Carolina. Now, Duke's offense, they have become a big play passing offense now with Malik Murphy. How does Carolina make that not be a problem? Of course, they've had trouble stopping the run too.
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing that you have to do is Malik Murphy has had explosive passing plays down the field with 20-plus yards. And that means I would back my corners up just a little bit and I wouldn't press him because he's going to hold on to the ball and he's got a cannon. Even coming from Texas, all we heard was, hey, he's got a great arm, strong arm. And strong arm guys like to push the ball down the field, especially using the middle. And that's where the linebackers have to cover tight ends and slot receivers. I think if you look at their completion percentage, I'd probably say there's a high volume inside the hash marks we call it of the field. So I would jam and reroute receivers a lot this week with what Jeff Collins wants to do because Carolina the first 3 weeks was blitzing a ton, and even versus JMU early in the game we were blitzing a ton and getting good pressure. So I think you just got to keep doing that and try to get him off his spot. But the kids played outstanding football the first 4 weeks. So definitely got to jam receivers and try to throw them off their routes. And that's really kind of disrupts the entire passing game, in my opinion.
Mack Brown loves this game. He is 5-0 against Duke since coming back. I mean, you could argue that they've simply had better players, although Duke's had some very good teams in this 5-year run. Do you think people underestimate how much it means to players? Because they certainly enjoy ringing the bell when the game's over.
Yeah, I think it's more of locker room to locker room. And, this game is so special for a lot of people. The guys that have come before us as Tar Heels and even, Blue Devils. I think it's one of those high school rivalries that you will never forget. And I think a lot of people kind of misunderstand how much you hate each school, especially for 4 quarters. And that's one thing that we always understood. And honestly, the coaches did a good job of making it different than any other week. And I know Coach Brown, is I think we're going to come out and have our hair on fire because we know how much it means to ring that bell and go take it from, the other sideline. And I know how much it meant for guys in the locker room. I mean, Adam, we would have weeks of full contact, take tackling to the ground because we're playing Duke or we're playing State. It just meant more. And I think, that's something that's really special in college athletics. And honestly, I don't think Saturday is going to be any different.
Bryn Renner is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show, played quarterback at UNC, as you all know, and now part of the radio network. Do you like that this game is the ACC opener for both schools?
I don't. I don't. I like it at the end when it matters, and that's always when we played them. It was more of like the anticipation. Hey, can you go to a bowl game? What bowl are you going to go to, or can you knock somebody out of bowl contention? I remember we played. I think it was 2000, maybe it was 2011, and they were rolling and we were rolling, and we beat them at home. And it was one of those games. I think Sean Rinfrey was the quarterback, and we discussed this a couple times. And it was like one of those games where we were either going to go to a nice bowl game or they were, and it just meant more, especially late in the season and when everybody was clicking. So I don't know why the ACC put it, it's the opening game, but I'd like to see it go back in the year. I would love for us to even play Duke and State back to back, and then vice versa. Because I think that would be really cool.
That's the way it used to be. It was either State first and then Duke first, or it was Duke first then State. But now, who knows? I mean, there's 70 teams in the ACC. We'll probably get to a point where Carolina and Duke don't play every year in football, which of course is silly. But the ACC isn't necessarily a logical year. Now, let me ask you real quick as we have to say goodbye. Bryn Renner, one of the greats, former North Carolina quarterback, and of course part of the radio broadcast now. I would say that. To use a relationship term, Carolina's in a little bit of a vulnerable state right now. Mack certainly is. He was all over the place after the loss to JMU, and I understand it. He hates to lose. He can't figure out how JMU put 70 on the board, all of that. How easily is it to, I'm trying to get this the best way. The players almost have to come to their coach's defense here. It's a difficult position, I guess, to put players in. How do they rally around Mack this week and tomorrow?
It's a great question. And I think the better locker room you have, it gets to the point where you're playing for your coach. And that can motivate a team. It happened with us. And I can go from personal experience. Butch gets let go, and we have Everett. And it motivated us. We started off the season 6-1. And it was personal pride, everybody doing their job a little bit extra, and especially coming off the JMU game, you want to play harder for your coach. And so when I said this week, it could be a blessing in disguise, and you don't know what fires the team up, but I think that fired us up a little bit. Coach Brown's done some great things for the university, and he wants to, keep doing this and keep it's a personal hit when you lose a game like that. Mm-hmm. And I've been a part of those, like I mentioned, but I think as a player, just taking myself back in the locker room, practices were better, lifting was better. You just kind of dialed in because you were doing it for your coach. And so because you care about him. He cares about you and you care about him, and you want to have success, and everybody's trying to achieve the same thing. So I think it could be a blessing in disguise, especially playing a big game this week.
It is. No, there's no time like the present. Mack is always dialed up for this one. I think we're going to have a great game. I think Duke is good, and I think Carolina isn't as bad as getting 70 put on them by JMU. Mm-hmm. And like I said it before, you would think, based on the way everybody's talked, that Carolina's 0-3, but they are 3-1. And the win over Minnesota was, I thought, a pretty good performance in a lot of different ways. I thought the defense looked really good in that game, and they're going to have to get back to that against the Blue Devils. We'll be listening. Bryn Renner, former Tar Heel quarterback, at Bryn Renner on Twitter. My friend, I appreciate your time always. I will bug you again very soon.
You're the best, Adam. Have a good one.
You too. Bryn Renner here on The Adam Gold Show.